start going around the room now.
So there have been plenty of autobiographies about Steve Jobs, especially after his death. But how many of you guys have actually read any of them? Anybody in here? No? Okay, well, I've done some extensive research in order to find out some more information on him, and I was able to kind of condense things down and make a shorter biography to share with you guys today. And I think it's important to know about him because we use the technology that he's created every day. So first off, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about his early life, and then I'm going to talk about his company, and then I'm going to also discuss a little bit about his later life. So first, let's talk about his early life. Steve Jobs is a local guy, and he was born in San Francisco, California on February 24th, 1955. So he would have been 58 years old today. He was put up for adoption by his mother, Joanne Simpson, and his mother was a speech therapist, and his father was John Jandali, and he was a Syrian political science professor. So after Steve was given up for adoption by his parents went and had another child. Her name was Mona Simpson, and Steve Jobs didn't find out about his biological family until he was about 27 years old, and he got into all his fame. But him and his sister were very close, and one thing that he said is that we're family, and she's one of my best friends in the whole world. So Steve Jobs was adopted by Clara Jobs, who was an accountant, and Paul Jobs, who was a mechanic, and a Coast Guard veteran. And eventually, Steve just kept getting into trouble as he was growing up, so what they did is they moved to Mountain View, California in the Silicon Valley. And Steve was taught by his dad how to take apart and put back together electronics, which enhanced his skills with technology. And Steve Jobs went to Cupertino High, and then he went to Homestead High in 1971. And one of his peers said that he was a loner, pretty much of a crybaby, and that he didn't quite fit in with everyone else, and he wasn't one of the guys. And it wasn't until some time later that he found people who shared the same common interests as him in technology, and that's when he started making friends. And one of his friends was Bill Fernandez, who lived across the street from Steve Wozniak, who I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But Wozniak helped Bill with a lot of his science projects because he was in college while Steve Jobs and Bill Fernandez were still in high school. And Bill introduced Steve Jobs to Steve Wozniak a couple years down the line, but they didn't really get along just for the fact that they have an age difference. Later on, Steve went to get an internship at Hewlett Packard, which turned into a summer job. And he graduated from high school in 1972, and he went to Reed College in Portland, Oregon, but of course, like any entrepreneur, he dropped out. Although he still decided to attend lectures, he liked taking calligraphy, which is just decorative handwriting or lettering, and he also liked typography, which is the style and the appearance of printed material. He also did meditation throughout his college years, and meditating helped him with his business. So speaking of his business, let's talk about how it started. So like I said, Jobs and Wozniak later became friends, and they started a company called Apple Computer, and it started out of Steve Jobs' garage. And later on, they sold a lot of their things and like their favorite prized possessions just to make money in order to start their company. So in 1975, the first Apple computer was created. It was called Apple I, but it wasn't that successful, so they created another computer called Apple II. But it was successful, but it wasn't as good as IBM. So in the company, Wozniak was responsible for designing the computers and building them, while Steve Jobs was the face of Apple, and all he did was mainly market and promote the company. Eventually, their company began to flourish, and it was very profitable. So Steve Jobs felt that they needed a company for their president for their company. So he turned to John Scully of Pepsi Cola to fulfill that position. And Scully thought Jobs was really hurting the company, so he decided to kick Steve Jobs out. And eventually, Steve Jobs resigned from Apple in 1985. So after he resigned, he went to go have his own company, and it was called Next. And it was basically a software and hardware company. He also bought the animation company called Pixar Animation Studios from George Lucas. And it was a $50 million company, which later merged with Disney. and Steve Jobs became the largest shareholder of Disney. So Steve Jobs still had the company next, but it wasn't very successful. But Apple did see potential in his work, and they figured that they could use his software to develop their own company. So Apple bought Next from Steve Jobs for $429 million in 1947, and Steve also got his job back as CEO at Apple. And then soon after that, Apple took off with their new iOS system, and Steve Jobs made Apple products simpler and easier for the consumer, like our iPods and our iPads and our iPhones and things like that. So it really, really took off after that. And then a little bit down the line in his later life, he started to get sick. In 2003, he was diagnosed with a neuroendocrine tumor caused by pancreatic cancer. So he waited 9 months instead of getting to get surgery. And everyone was worried about him because they didn't want people to find out that he was sick and pull money out of the company. So in 2004, Steve Jobs decided to go in and get surgery, and he actually pulled through. It was very successful. And then in 2009, he started losing weight again, but like every person in the spotlight, he didn't want his whole life to be public. So he had a small meeting where he gathered the people who thought were important to come and discuss about his illness with them. And he was also married in 1991 to Lorraine Powell, who had 3 children, and he also had a girlfriend on the side who he had a daughter with, and her name was Lisa. But Steve Jobs didn't claim Lisa until she was about 7 years old, and then in her teen years, she went to go live with him. On October 5th, 2011, Steve Jobs was pronounced dead in Palo Alto at 56 years old. And people, including myself, continued to wonder if Apple would continue to be successful or if they would fail. But it's been 2 years since his death, and everything's been going okay. They're even coming up with an iPhone 5S soon, so that will be something interesting to see. In conclusion, I hope this gave you all an insight on his early life, his company, and his later life. Steve Jobs is a great entrepreneur of our time, and I'm sure we will all continue to use his products for years to come. But before I leave you guys, I want to show you guys a short clip of his bio by bio.com.